Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
The countdown to Paris is on as the world prepares to unite to celebrate the beginning of the 2024 Summer Games. Joining me now with insight on what we can expect at this year's Olympics is Scott Johnson, who was a member of the gold medal winning U.S. men's Olympic team at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. He was also the team captain of the 1988 Seoul team and was the U.S. national champion in 1987. Scott, welcome to the Bloom Health Club.
Well, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here and certainly an honor.
Well, I have to tell you, it was an honor because on Bloom, our globally syndicated health and wellness show, Scott let me hold his gold medal, which you have with you today. And that was, I've touched the Stanley Cup before, but never held a gold medal. That is something incredible.
Well, thank you. It was something that I cherish, will always cherish. And it was something that was totally unexpected to happen in my life.
Yeah. And so talk to me about your personal experience, because you said that, no one was really looking at the U.S. to win.
Well, we've competed against, we had a great team back then in the early 80s. We were considered ourselves in the top 4 or 5 in the world leading up to the Olympic Games in 1984. And then we did really well in the 1983 World Championships and leading into 84. And we had a great team. There was a lot of passion on our team. We were a true family. One of the unique things about our team was that the 6 members that competed in 1984, we competed together ever since like 1981. So we were a true family. We knew each other really well, and we trained and worked very well together. But leading up to the 84 games, the Chinese, they were the world power at the time. We've never beat them in a competition before. They were just extraordinary athletes. So for us to wind up coming out on top in LA, it was like a miracle.
And you say that you feel like a lot of that was just part of the mental game of it all, in addition to the athletic and physical game.
Well, and that's so important that a lot of people really don't understand the emotion that goes through these athletes' minds. And I just returned from watching the USA Gymnastics Olympic trials, and it was our 40th year anniversary. It was just a fabulous event. And we're sitting there watching these athletes, and I know what they're feeling emotionally, and what they're going through and what they had to go through to get there at that point. And then the Olympic trials are just phenomenal because these athletes, the stress level is just absolutely insane. And because you train your whole life for one thing to happen in your life. It's a dream that you have from when you're little, and you have one chance to make it. And you got to perform. You have to do well at the Olympic trials. And so it's amazing what the emotions that you go through at an event like that.
I want to bring in Brody Waddell, who is our lead digital reporter and producer for BloomTampaBay.com. So, Brody, we have a gold medalist with us
Right.
with a little bit of insight as to what we can look forward to when the 2024 games start, which is right around the corner.
It's right here. Yeah, coming up. It's exciting.
So do you have any predictions from what you witnessed, or anything for us to keep an eye out for from what you saw at the trials?
Well, I think this is probably the USA men's best chances in a long time to get up on the podium and possibly win the gold medal. It has not been a men's gymnastics team for the USA has not done it since we have won back in 1984.
Oh, wow.
We won silver, and but we've not repeated the gold.
Right.
And so we're due. And the USA men's team this year is just phenomenal. The athletes on there are great. We have several members on that Olympic team that just made the Olympic team that have won gold at World Championships. So if they can just put it together, and we talked about that before, you put it together at the right moment, then they can do it. They can win it.
Absolutely. Hasn't our women's team been incredibly dominant these past few games?
The USA women's have been dominant for years now.
Yeah.
thanks to Mary Lou Retton in 1984, she catapulted women's gymnastics in the United States, and it's just been phenomenal since then. You know, we've had Shannon Miller, we've had, of course, Gabby Douglas. USA women's gymnastics has been at the pinnacle of the world's gymnastics for a number of years now. So we are expecting them, if they do well, to win gold this year.
And you say it's a lot different. I mean, then versus now. How so?
Well, I think just the athletes are training harder at a younger age. The expectations are much higher. The skill level is just phenomenal. You see kids at even the lower levels of the elite athletes doing skills that were our best skills back when we were Olympic athletes. So the skill levels has really done well. They've made a few changes to the equipment, which has enhanced it a little bit. But I think mostly it's just the training. I think the coaching has gotten a lot better. The skill level has just advanced to a way that couldn't even imagine when we were competing back then.
Right. Is this something you pretty much have to start as a kid in order to do? I don't see any grown people being like, I'm going to be a gymnast now.
You know, that's such a great point, and there's a lot of mixed emotions on that. To reach the level that these athletes are at today, you have to start young, but there's a trade-off there. Okay, for the men, it takes longer for them to mature. You know, men just mature at a later age. They don't reach their physical peak until they're in their late teens, early 20s. On the women's side, it's a lot different. They have a much shorter window. But the earlier they start, the better they're going to be if they can stay healthy, both physically and emotionally. The sport's a very hard sport. There's been many studies that have done, and they say that gymnastics is probably physically and mentally one of the most hardest sports out there. And it is. I feel it today. Every day I get up, my bones are and my muscles are tight. You know, the sport takes a toll on the body. So when you're training at a young age and you're starting to excel in the sport at a young age, you know, the risks are much higher to reach a high level because the body just can wear down. You just never know. And even back when I competed against many athletes who were as good as I was, if not better, and but they just weren't able to get to that pinnacle because they had an injury or something that happened, or emotional burnout. That's huge too. That's very difficult to overcome. All of us athletes at an elite level have experienced burnout once in a while. Sometimes it takes a while to overcome. Some athletes just throw in the towel and give up.
Yeah, and I think too, and we talked about this with Brooke Bennett, 3-time Olympic gold champion for U.S. swimming, who resides here in Tampa Bay, and she talked a lot about Simone Biles and how much respect she had for her for stepping away when she needed to, especially in the world of gymnastics, because that is not a sport that you have to be firing with all of these Olympic sports. You have to be firing on all cylinders,
100%.
but you could really injure yourself with one move if you're not mentally and physically 110% there.
Oh, and that's absolutely true. The risk level, especially now, is very, very high these guys are doing death-defying skills. And so if you're not prepared physically or emotionally to go out there and perform these skills, then you're putting yourself at high risk. So that's why the training is extreme for these athletes. You can't take a break from the sport. If you're in the air, and going back to Simone Biles, the last Olympic Games, she got what they call the twisties. And that's a thing. That really is a thing in the sport. And as much as Simone Biles flips and twists, it's very understandable that can happen. So she did the right thing in stepping back, because she would have put herself at big risk, and it's great that she has now been able to overcome that and move forward, and now she's prepped for being successful in Paris. But you have to be so mentally focused in this sport, and it just takes consistent training, doing it over and over and over again. It takes years and years to learn just for example, just one skill. And just because they're so complicated, they're so difficult.
Yeah, I bet. Can you explain to me why all you gymnasts are so incredibly muscular and in shape? Like, you're not lifting weights, are you? Everyone's just crazy, like jacked. It's like it doesn't make any sense.
They are. They are. Well, you have to have, and if you notice, I'm not a very tall guy.
Yeah.
And most of the times we go to these public events and people say, boy, you look so much taller on television. Well, because we're all little.
Yeah.
Gymnastics is a sport where it just takes the smaller stature of athlete to be able to do the flipping, the twisting, to have the center of gravity be where it's at, where you can maximize your strength. Because you have to be in the sport of gymnastics, you have to be as strong as possible, but yet be as light as possible. Okay, it's not like wrestling where they got to go back and you got to lose 5 pounds to make your weight to compete in your category. We don't lift weights. And most of us had never lifted, going to the gym and actually lifting barbells and doing that types of weight lifting because, yes, it does build muscle bulk, but muscle's heavy, okay? And so the heavier you are, then the more difficult it is to do some of those strengths on the rings. Like you had seen that picture of me on the rings. If I was super heavy and bulked up too much, I would not have been able to do that skill. And so all of our weight training is done actually doing the sport and conditioning in the gym.
I want to talk a little bit about what you're up to now, which I think is really incredible, how you're sharing your gift with youth of today. You have 3 different training facilities in Seminole County, which is in Central Florida. And I think it's so exciting because not only do you help our youth, whether they become Olympic athletes or they're just being part of a discipline, sport, but the way you coach, your coaching style, talk to me about that.
Well, I love the sport of gymnastics, and I've seen athletes that have retired from the sport, and they retire not feeling good about what they did, and how they perform. I've been a coach for years and years and years. I know how hard the sport of gymnastics is. Only a very tiny fraction of individuals that can participate and compete in gymnastics reach to a pretty high level. It's just, when you think of the hundreds of thousands of little kids out there doing gymnastics, and then to reach that level, I mean, it's just a minuscule fraction. And so I know how hard the sport is. And as a gymnastics coach, I know that when I look at these students, most of them aren't going to get to that elite level. It's just not going to happen. There's so many factors that go into play to reach that level. But gymnastics is a great sport. It's a great sport because it teaches focus, it teaches coordination, it teaches strength, it teaches flexibility, and it teaches discipline. And it's worked well for me. And I loved doing what I was doing for all those years, and I walked away from the sport when I retired, super satisfied. And if I had a chance to do it all over again, I would do it just the same way. I don't have any regrets at all. I just loved it, and I want to have the students that I work with feel the same way. Not everybody's going to walk out of that gym and be able to become an Olympic champion, or maybe even not a national champion. But I want them to feel good about their experience. So that's one thing. I want every student, they need to have a purpose in life, they need to have structure in life, and they need to have a lot of positives in life. And I think that's really important in youth development. And so we try to provide that as our philosophy when we're working with the kids all the time. I've seen athletes that are pushed to the point where they're just miserable. And I've seen a lot of coaches out there, and there are a lot of coaches out there that create Olympic champions, but they don't create them in a positive manner. They create them through a coaching atmosphere that is a tyrant atmosphere or a boot camp type of atmosphere. But I've known other coaches out there that have created Olympic champions that have a totally different type of philosophy where it's a lot more positive. And I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, because to your point, a lot of these youth, it takes almost the perfect storm to make it to the Olympic level. So the big takeaway for youth is that you are part of something structured. You are part of something disciplined, and you are part of something that can develop you in a way that you can use these skills later on in life.
And that's absolutely true. A lot of athletes that do well in sport, youth athletes that do well in sport, also do very well in school, and they wind up being successful as they age and mature and go into the professional fields, all because of their experience as a young athlete. If it is done correctly, I think, because young athletes, they look up to their coaches. They look up to them, and the coaches need to create the path that these kids need to follow. And if the path is a good, positive path, then it's going to be great in the outcome, future outcome of every athlete. But it could go the opposite way as well. And I have never wanted to put an athlete in a position where they feel like they're a failure. That will never happen in our program.
That's really, really beautiful. Moving back to the Olympics, which is right around the corner, anything like when you watch this, when you witness this, you must see it through a different lens.
I do, and I think I have a lot of emotion when I watch them. I'm on the edge of my seat. It's like I'm actually out there participating and doing it with them because I know what they have to do. I know how the skills work. I know how they prepared, and I know what they're thinking. And I know what to look for. If I see one bent knee, it's like, uh-oh, that's a 10th off. That's going to affect their score. So I look for those things. And when I coach athletes, I'm a technician freak, I guess. I tell the parents of the students that I work with, I know the technique. I know what needs to be done for these skills to be done successfully and for it to be done properly. And when I see mistakes, I see it, and I feel it as they feel it, because I've certainly failed in my career many times, and they always say only through failure are you going to succeed, and that happens to every athlete out there. But when I'm watching it, I look at it in that way. So I may look at it a little different than somebody else. I may look at it a little more critical than maybe someone else that hasn't actually experienced it.
Do you have any questions for Scott?
How do you even work up to something like that? Because it seems like any little mistake is catastrophic.
Well, and going back to the mental preparation, it's just, all the athletes are physically ready, unless they have had an injury or overcoming an injury or something like that. They're ready. They're ready for that. They're ready for that competition. They're ready for those Olympic trials. They're ready for those Olympic Games, physically, the emotional part. And everybody handles it differently. When I was training for the Olympic trials, which were actually in Jacksonville, so Jacksonville holds a special place in my heart. That was in 1984. As I was preparing for that, I didn't want to be around people very much. Out of the gym, I used to, and I loved the outdoors. I used to love to go fishing. I would just jump in my car and run out to the lake by myself, and I would fish, and just being out there alone just to clear my head, because the mental focus that you have to have. You got one chance in life to make that Olympic team that you've been training for your whole life, and you only have one chance. It's not like you can go and make a mistake and I can come back and I'll come back and try it again tomorrow. And
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
No, one major mistake and it keeps you off that team. So the mental preparation is just crazy.
Do you feel like there's just things in life that you just missed out? Had to focus on this so much?
Well, you see, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that question. Now, back when I competed, you didn't have all the private clubs that you see out there right now. When I was training as a kid, it was all through the public school system. They don't have it anymore because of the liability reasons. They've had to pull all the equipment and pull those sports. But my middle school had it. My first team I was on, my elementary school, had a tumbling team. That was my first competitive experience in gymnastics. And
talk to us about your schooling. Where were you? Where did all this happen?
Well, in Cincinnati, Ohio is where I was born. I lived till I was 10. And I was introduced to the sport when I was in the 4th grade. The class I was in put on a school play, and it involved doing little gymnastics, tumbling skills.
Nice.
And I was just a crazy, hyperactive kid, and I loved sports. I played football, baseball. I was on the swimming team. I did all that. I didn't even know what gymnastics was. And then this was introduced to me through this school play that I did. And I got the lead role in that play because all the skills just came natural to me. And it was just cool as could be. I just loved doing them. And then we moved to Colorado Springs. My family moved to Colorado Springs back in about 1970 or so. And my parents put me in a YMCA program, and that's where it started. I just thought it was just the coolest thing in the world, flipping and being upside down. And I love, now if God would have made me a big man, I would have played football because I loved football. I was good too. I was not afraid. There was a full tackle. I wasn't afraid to get tackled, and I wasn't afraid to tackle, and I loved it. I was just too little. So gymnastics, something that it was what I was made to do.
Yeah.
And what about college?
So I went to, I went through my entire middle school and high school career in Colorado Springs, did well there, and was fortunate enough to earn a full scholarship. I was one of the country's best youth athletes coming out of high school. And Nebraska at the time, University of Nebraska in Lincoln at the time, had the best gymnastics program in the country. They had 3 Olympians on that team that I looked up to, was watching, that I idolized. And I always had in the back of my mind, I started dreaming that, I set a goal and dreamed that I was going to be an Olympian someday. And that started when I was about 13, I think. So every minute of every day, I worked to try to do everything I could to achieve that goal. That it was a dream back then. And so when I was in high school, when I was a junior and senior in high school, the talk was Nebraska. And they were the best team in the country. Well, that's where I wanted to go. And I wanted to go to Nebraska because I knew that I had to train with the best if I was going to be the best I could be. I had to train with the best. I had other people tell me, and my parents even said, why don't you go to a college? And I was recruited by several colleges. So why don't you go to a college where you could be like the best on the team your first year? I said, well, that would be pretty cool. But I don't think that it would be my best fit. I said, for me to be the best I can be, I need to go train with the best. And so I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the coach for the University of Nebraska. And apparently I made a good enough impression that they offered me a full scholarship. And so then there was just no saying no. I was absolutely, Nebraska was where I was going to go. So I went to Nebraska, and I was a low man in the totem pole. But I was all of a sudden teammates to some former 1980 Olympians that were on that team. And I think I made the right choice.
And I kind of hijacked Brody's original question, but now that we've kind of heard your journey, you've dedicated much of your life. And like Brody asked originally, like, do you feel like you gave up a lot going for the gold?
No, I don't. And going back to that, I was able to live a pretty normal, youth life because our seasons were seasonal. And I wasn't having to be stuck in a gym for 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Where now, going back to your question now, how early, is it advantageous for these kids to start early in these clubs? Well, that's their life. When they go to a competitive gymnastics club and the coaches see they have talent, they put them on these teams. Well, all of a sudden, then they progress through those teams. You're in the gym 6 days a week for many hours a day. That's all you do. I got to live a pretty normal life as a kid. And so, that I didn't have to sacrifice. Now I had to sacrifice some things when I was in college and I made the national team, and there were some things that I had to sacrifice, but you got to sacrifice to achieve.
Right.
And that's just part of the game.
Amen to that. How do folks in Central Florida find you if they've got, young kids that, want to be trained by an Olympic gold champion, Scott?
Well, now my programs are unique. I'm not a competitive program.
Okay.
I'm very small. So the three locations that I have are in little strip centers. I mean, they're like 1,200 square foot little rooms, in strip centers. But that's all that it takes to get these kids started, to get them excited about the sport, and then if they choose that they want to take the sport to the next level after they've been with us for a while, there's competitive gyms where they can go to. And I push that, or I
So if you spot
support that.
talent, you channel
put 'em
those
through.
kids.
If I spot talent and they progress through, and then the parent says, "Boy, what's the next step?" I say, "Well, this is where they could go." And then there's lots of gyms in the Central Florida area that do competitive gymnastics that they go to, and I have a good relationship with them all, and they love it when I send kids their way. So when someone wants to, we're the perfect program for students to get started and excited about the sport of gymnastics. You can find those. You can find my studios if you just Google Scott Johnson.
Okay.
Just Google Scott Johnson's Gymnastics, and you'll see I got Facebook pages for each of those.
Nice.
And all the information. My website's tied to all those, and it's just easy to Google.
All right.
Cool.
Been great. What an
Yeah.
honor to
I
have
know.
a gold medalist on our show, and we certainly appreciate you joining Brody and myself.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. We're all hyped up for Paris. Every time an Olympic year comes around, we're all hyped up, and we're all pushing for those athletes to go out there and do the best they can. And I think USA Gymnastics this year has got a great chance of being very successful.
Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Till next time.